All right, thanks for staying with the Monday Town Hall. Colonel Cyrus Oguna is still with me here, joining me on Skype. Colonel, there's a question here that people from the informal sector are saying that if they get food, then they are able to stay home. Is there any hope for giving them free food, for example?
Indeed, Trevor, like we have always said, that these are not normal times. These are very, very difficult times for everyone. These are abnormal times. And we understand that those who might have are likely to lose livelihood. There are those who have already lost livelihoods and are staying home. And you're saying that right now we must be able to make adjustments. However, the government has not necessarily lost, the thought that at some point it may just be necessary to consider certain options. As of now, we are looking at several options to see how we can be able to show up in those, areas that may be completely impacted by the situation that we are in currently. And therefore, as we are speaking now, what advice I would give to those that are in informal settlement is to, adjust a bit of their lifestyle, asking neighbors to be able to help where they can be able to help. And the government is every day looking at the best way that it can be able to move in and cushion those who may be impacted significantly. Because again, we are conscious of our socioeconomic realities, and we do understand that there are those who will be impacted more than others, and the government has not lost sight of that.
Okay, so we have another question here. Why can't the government slash fuel levy so that fuel goes down and the PSVs can operate on low fares?
The government is conscious of everything in as far as taxes are concerned, not only of fuel, but also other sectors of the economy, in terms of even areas of money transfer, mobile money, interest to the banks and even mortgages. And therefore, the government is talking to many other players to ensure that, the cost of, living is brought down. We understand these are not normal times, and therefore, such times requires, certain unusual measures to be able to deal with them.
Okay. Colonel Masharia Kenneth is asking, what are the policies for barber shops as far as corona prevention is concerned?
Ask that again, I didn't pick that well.
What is the policy directive for barber shops as far as corona prevention is concerned?
The policy as far as barber shop is concerned is, first of all, to maintain hygiene. Yeah. That is number one. When people are coming into your shop, they must disinfect. You must also disinfect your equipment, the tool that they're using, right? And where the barber shop must also ensure, the barber person must also ensure that he's able to disinfect his hands, and therefore, as he's working on his client, he's also supposed to ensure that every equipment and tool he's using are all disinfected. But of course, within the barber shop, we're still asking that that 1 meter social distance must be maintained.
All right. There's a question
that are waiting to be worked on.
Colonel, there's a question here about lifting of taxes. Is that something the government is considering?
The taxes, to be honest, cannot be lifted entirely, because the government, again, must continue to operate. The government, is not a business enterprise, and therefore it must be able to fund its operation from taxes. Taxes will be there. There's no government globally that is able to lower or to remove all taxes, because of a situation like this. Taxes will be there, but considerations are being made to ensure that certain areas of economy where, some kind of rebate or lowering of taxes may be considered.
Okay. Ike Kitio is asking the government, he says, why the issue of water supply in Nairobi? What is the government doing to ensure there's enough water supply in Nairobi?
Say that again.
Ike Kitio is wondering what the government is doing to ensure there's enough water supply in Nairobi.
Thank you very much. The Ministry of Water is working to ensure that there is sufficient water, not only in Nairobi, but in all other counties and all the other urban centers, because water is key. And you've been able to also notice that there are certain public spaces where water have been connected so that people can be able to wash their hands, not just water, but even soap. And therefore, the government is alive of the importance of water, not only in Nairobi, but across, all towns and public spaces in the country.
All right.
So all governments are alive of the fact that the water is important, and if you go to most countries, they have been able to establish water points for the public to be able to wash their hands and also be able in certain areas to sanitize.
And Martin Mburu is asking about passengers stranded at the JKIA after being made aware of a 12,000 shillings per night fee for self-quarantine. What about those of us who cannot afford that money?
Hello, ask that again.
That is from Martin Mburu is wondering about the passengers who are stranded at the JKIA after being made aware of a 12,000 shillings per night fee for self-quarantine. He's wondering what about those of them who cannot afford it?
The government is aware about that. The government has been able to negotiate lower rates for those who are coming in from outside to be able to quarantine at their own cost. But we also appreciate that, not everybody is able to pay a certain amount of money, and that's why the government has been able to put facilities that are run by government. For those who want to go to hotels, of course, they have got the freedom to do that. But those who are unable to afford, then they'll be able to get to government-owned quarantine facilities.
All right. And the other question here is an issue of the slum that has come up again. Now, I'm trying to get your question here from someone here. Are government officials considering taking pay cuts?
It depends. A lot of considerations are being made to ensure that the economy keeps on running, that the economy does not suffer. And indeed, even now, there are government employees who are actually, have been advised to go home. If this thing continues the way it is, certainly, pay cut is one of the considerations that will have to be considered.
Okay. Leo Senior is wondering where the hand sanitizers that the government is saying it's providing for free.
I didn't hear that.
Where are the hand sanitizers that the government is supposed to be providing for free?
It's provided. Production is ongoing, and as soon as that is completed, sanitizers will be provided for free. However, it is also important to state here that the number one defense in as far as this infection of this virus is concerned is the washing of hands using ordinary soap as well as water. And therefore, having hand sanitizer is just like the second line of defense. But the first line of defense, which is not very expensive, is to just use normal water and normal soap for as long as the water is clean and it is running water.
Okay. And Shaki says, if flights had been cancelled earlier from Italy, we wouldn't be facing this situation now. Why is the government cancelling flights now while they should have done this early?
We have looked at many other considerations. We have looked at what happened in other jurisdictions as well. Remember, planning from other people's experiences sometimes is the best way of learning. And therefore, when we are suspending flights, it is the right time for us to do that.
Is that an admission that we should have done it earlier, Colonel?
I'm saying that earlier on it was not necessary, but looking at the trend and how things are developing, then making that decision to ensure that by Wednesday midnight there is no other flight is the right time to make that decision.
But in hindsight, should we have done it earlier?
Well, you're asking that question on the basis of what other people have done. We looked at several factors, and those factors led us to make that decision that Wednesday midnight is the right time to be able to ensure that there is no other flights coming to the country. However, I must also add that it is, even though no international flights are coming in, but flights that are bringing in supplies, like cargo flights only, will be allowed in.
Yeah. So
that we do not necessarily grind our economy to a complete halt, because there are those who are relying on raw materials from other parts of the world. There are those who will be importing medication and other provisions as well, and therefore only cargo flights will be allowed in. And indeed also at the port of Mombasa, only ships that are carrying supplies will be allowed into the country. Now, however, the crew, like anybody else who is coming from outside, must quarantine.
Okay. Drusilla Kore is saying that the government has money, more than 7 billion shillings, about 7 billion from CBK, another 6 billion from World Bank. Why is it so hard to give food to Kenyans?
Listen, there's so much that needs to be done in as far as this issue of capacity building in terms of ensuring that we have sufficient capacity in all our quarantine facilities across the country. Remember, we are preparing for the worst, but you're hoping for the best. And so that when it happens, we are not necessarily caught flat-footed. And therefore, we are equipping all our healthcare workers across the country. We are providing necessary equipment in all our health facilities across the country. And therefore, that money that you're saying, considering how much what it needs to do, and also in terms of also ensuring that every Kenyan, wherever he is armed with information in as far as this disease is concerned, that money is a drop in the ocean.
All right. Colonel, I have a few more questions for you here that were sent via video. Let's listen to one of them.
Francis Mugo from Lamu. Would the government admit to be the cause of a coronavirus in Kenya after allowing flights from affected region to land in Kenya? Thank you.
It's related to the question we were talking about, whether the government can admit that it is the cause of the coronavirus in Kenya by allowing flights from affected areas.
That is not true. Remember, even though the cases that we are dealing with as of now are cases that initially, came from outside, but we must also appreciate that we have, sufficient measures at the airport to be able to ensure that whoever is coming in is subjected to very, very stringent screening procedure. And therefore, it is not to say that whatever we are undergoing through right now is because of the flight. It could have come from anywhere else, maybe through the borders. But however, the focus right now is to ensure that we limit the spread of the virus. That wherever it is now, if you can be able to obey and adhere to the advisory and measures that have been put by the government, we will be able to flatten our curve within a short time. And therefore, looking back and beginning to blame is not where we should be going right now. We should be looking at what individuals need to do, what groups need to do to be able to take responsibility and ensure that everybody obeys government advisory, and therefore we will be able to flatten our curve within a short period of time.
All right, Colonel, as we wind up, what would you like Kenyans to hear from you this evening?
Thank you so much for this opportunity. Indeed, from the government, that every Kenyan must be able to obey advisory and obey the measures that have been put in place, because those measures are not just meant for the government. Those measures are meant for all of us, because every individual's life is important. And therefore, when one is able to protect himself and his family, he will be able to protect the entire society. And therefore, every and each one of us must be able to rise up to the highest level of discipline and be able to obey those advisory and measures that have been put in place in order for us to flatten our curve within a very short time.
All right. Colonel Cyrus Oguna, government spokesperson, thank you so much for staying late and speaking to us via Skype and answering all the questions that Kenyans have for you. I'm sure we'll have this conversation again and let you sleep for now, because I know you have a long day again tomorrow. Thank you so much for making time for us. All right. And that does it for the town hall session, the first of its kind. We're calling it the social distancing town hall session. Of course, a few teething problems here and there, but we'll perfect it as time goes by. Just the same way, I assure you, we will win this war against coronavirus, all right? Do not be afraid. Just stay clean, wash your hands, keep distance, avoid crowding, and you'll be just fine, all right? Have a blessed night. My name is Trevor Mbija. It was a pleasure having you with us. Let's do this again next week, and stand by for more updates on Daybreak as well. Bye for now.